what's up? Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Lauren and I am so excited that you came across this video today. As always, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button down below to stay up to date with all of my content. I post videos every Thursday. And if you aren't a subscriber or you just haven't been keeping up with my past videos, I have been doing a little apartment hunting in New York City series. I have 3 videos up right now with all of the apartments that I toured as well as prices. So if you'd like to check those out, I will leave them in the description box below. But I figured I'd make a video all about tips for apartment hunting in New York City just to wrap the series up. And so I'd have the 3 videos on the apartment tours and this last one about tips. I figured I'd make this video because a lot of these tips were things that I didn't know when I started apartment hunting, and I'm hoping that this maybe will help a few of you out if you are also interested in looking at apartments in New York City or if you're in the process of apartment hunting right now. A lot of these tips are a little bit more specific to New York City, but some of them are a little bit more general as well, and so you can use these for any apartment that you are looking at or looking to get. And so I'm just gonna jump right into it. I have 7 tips on how to find an apartment in New York City. Okay, so the first tip I have for you guys is the website that I used to find my apartment. And so FYI, I have all my tips on my laptop with a couple of questions if you see me referencing it. But the website I used to find my apartment was streeteasy.com. I'm sure if you've ever watched a apartment hunting video or tips for apartment hunting video in New York City that you have heard this website mentioned. I didn't know how great it was until I actually used it. I also used apartments.com. They were pretty great too, but StreetEasy is just in New York City and it is really easy and great to use. It also gives you a lot of information. And so I found StreetEasy to be the easiest to use, and I'll just walk you through how you use it. So go into Google and type in StreetEasy. It should be the first one that comes up. You then have the option for sales or rentals. And so for me, I did rentals, and then you can look up the neighborhood that you'd like. So click on the neighborhood. I clicked Manhattan. And then I would click on the bottom view map. If you know where you'd like to live, you can also just click it. But I choose view map. I also like to look at where it's located. And so let's say you're looking on the east side and you want to do Murray Hill and all of Midtown East, let's say. So click on that. It highlights where it is on the map, which is super nice. And then you can put in your minimum price. Let's say you are looking for a 1-bedroom between $2,000 and $3,000. You are looking for a 1-bedroom, or let's say a 1-bedroom or a studio. Give you more options. You can also hit the advanced options button and you can type in square feet, how many bathrooms you'd like, if there's any open houses, types of amenities you're looking for. So let's say you want a laundry in the building. So let's do that. You can also do the property types, and if you want it to be near any types of transit, you can click that and let's hit search. And all of these apartments show up. And so let's just click on this one. This is a nice one. Let's say, so this is 20 Park Avenue. It's $3,500. There's no fee on it, which it tells you. It tells you the net effective rent, which is also important to remember because I do go over this a little bit more at the end of the video. So it tells you the gross rent and the net effective rent. It tells you if there's any open houses. It gives you a nice description of the apartment. It gives you the amenities, so there's a doorman, an elevator, pets allowed, gym, laundry and building. It gives you, it's a 96 unit, 21-story building. It gives you the previous price history, and then it also gives you similar rentals, and the nearby transportation. So StreetEasy is kind of like an all-in-one app that I would really recommend using. I definitely found it to be the easiest of the apps, and then it also walks you through some pictures if you want to look at the apartment that way, and then it's super easy right here, right in the middle of the screen. You can just message the agent and be on your way with that. And so I find StreetEasy to be super easy to use, and I would definitely recommend it if you are looking for an apartment in New York City. My second tip I have is to be realistic with your time and your expectations. And so searching for an apartment in New York City can be really, really time consuming, and it's pretty exhausting, especially if you're not used to New York City and walking everywhere. If you're coming from out of town, it's definitely a little bit of a change. And so you have to be smart with your time and your schedule. Do not schedule a lot of tours in one day. I know me and my roommate ended up scheduling 4 tours in one day, and we were absolutely exhausted, and it's hard to determine about how much time it'll take per unit. It could take you 5 minutes, it could take you 20 minutes if you want to talk to the broker, or if you want to talk to, let's say, like maybe you want to talk with the doorman and see the type of building it is, if you want to look at all the amenities. So it can be really quick, or it could take you a bit of time, and so you have to plan accordingly, and you need to leave yourself also enough time in between tours to get to each apartment or get food if you need to. So don't schedule too many appointments in one day unless you're viewing multiple units in one building or within the same block. And then on the other hand, the rental market in New York City is very fast-paced and it's very quick. It's definitely starting to get a little bit back to normal with COVID, and so you have to be pretty quick if you find an apartment you like. You can't dilly-dally, and so don't expect an apartment to be available a month after you viewed it. If you like it, you basically have to put in an application right away. And so don't schedule too many tours in one day, but also recognize that the market is quick and apartments go very quickly. And so you may need to take 2 or 3 days and just schedule a couple tours each day. And then at the end of those 3 days, or if you find an apartment you love on day 2, just apply for it right away. The third tip I have is to research your neighborhood and to know your area. And so, do you know what neighborhood you want to live in? Are you open to living anywhere? These are important questions to ask yourself before you start the apartment hunting journey. If you're very focused on, let's say, staying on the west side, that's something that you want to know, and make sure you only look at apartments on the west side. If you're open to anywhere, you're definitely going to have to narrow down to a specific maybe couple of areas and start looking there, because there's thousands of apartments open in New York City, and if you're just open to living anywhere in New York City, you're going to be going through a ton of apartments to look at. And so you also have to take into consideration if you have anywhere to commute to, or if you have a job that you need to work from. If you're working from home, this is great, you can live anywhere, but if you have to commute to a job or a school, you may need to find an apartment within a specific area. So that's always important to know. It's also important to know, if you are commuting, where the nearest transportation options are, whether it's bus or a subway. You need to know how long it's going to take you to get there, if it's in the area, if the subway line that you need is close to your building. You would also probably want to know if there's any grocery stores or restaurants nearby. Again, if you're not used to the city, you do have to carry everything for the most part, and so getting groceries, you may want to look to see if your building is close to a grocery store so that you aren't dragging your groceries that far. Or if you have to take a subway to a grocery store, you have to take into consideration that you're bringing those bags on the subway. Last thing I would say about your neighborhood is to know your neighborhood at night. And there's areas in the city that are great during the day, not as great during the night, and so you'd want to know sort of where your neighborhood falls And I would recommend, if you find an apartment that you love or a neighborhood that you love and you're walking around during the day and you feel comfortable and you love it there, just to wait until the nighttime and walk around at night. See how you feel, see if you have that same comfort level, if you still like the area, sort of how maybe it clears out at night and there's not as many people around, or maybe it's just a different vibe than you felt during the day. And so it's important to know your area at night and see if you feel as comfortable as you did during the day. The fourth tip I have is to know your budget. This is very important. I know that a lot of people will go into apartment hunting and say, oh, well, I'm thinking I'll spend X amount of dollars, but I'm not really sure if I find a place that I love, I'll go up in price. And that's totally fine to do. But I think it's a lot easier if you know your budget and stick to it and only allow wiggle room if you really, really love an apartment or if it's your dream apartment. And so when I say know your budget, I would say know your max budget. There's a number in your head that you can't see yourself going above, and based on, your income and your salary, you don't want to go above that number. Know that number. Maybe start to look at apartments that are below that number, maybe towards the minimum to middle of your budget, and then it gives you a little bit of wiggle room to go up. If you start looking at apartments right at your max budget, you'll probably be disappointed because you're going to start seeing these apartments that are maybe a little bit nicer, a little bit more what you're looking for, and they start going up in price and then they go above your max budget. So try and stick with your budget as much as you can and go into these tours and apartments knowing your budget. Also, as I mentioned before when I was going through StreetEasy, there's a difference between gross rent and net effective rent. And so as you saw on that last apartment that I showed you, the gross rent was around $3,500. The net effective rent was around $2,900. And I just want to see. Yes, so they gave 2 months free on a 12-month lease, meaning that the original rent is $35.95. After 2 months free, it is $29.96. And so a lot of places do things differently. I had viewed 2 apartments that had a offering of one was 1 month free, one was 2 months free, and one building said that you pay the net effective rent throughout the entirety of your lease, meaning for this apartment specifically, for 12 months you would pay $29.96. Another building said that you would pay the gross rent for 10 months out of the 12 months of your lease, and 2 months would be completely free, meaning that for the first 2 months you would not pay. Then for the next 10 months, you would pay $35.95. And so every building does it differently, but you're still getting that, for this apartment specifically, that 2 months free. And so StreetEasy is really great in telling you if there's any deals or promotions on the apartment. And so that's also something to look into with your budget. I noticed that a lot of units that I was looking at were right at the max of our budget, but then with the net effective rent, it did bring it down a decent amount. And so just be mindful of that, and hopefully there's a couple of deals that you can still get in the city. The city's definitely getting back to normal. There's a lot less deals out there, but there's still a couple of buildings that are offering some pretty great deals. And then this goes into when to negotiate your rent. And so if there's already a deal, 2 months free, 3 months free, you probably have a harder time negotiating rent, but it's always worth a shot. You never know until you ask. And so if there's no deal, if there's no months free, it's worth asking if they can do a half a month or a month free. Maybe they can waive the amenity fees, or maybe they can waive a pet fee if they charge for a pet, or even waive an application fee. And so it's always worth negotiating your rent and seeing what they say. I wouldn't be scared to do it. A lot of people negotiate their rent in the city. It's just a part of the apartment hunting process. And I think that the brokers or the landlords in the building, whatever it is, they expect you to ask for something as an incentive for you to move in there. So they expect it, and you may as well ask and see what they say. The worst they can say is no, and then you either go with the apartment or you don't. And then you have to also know what type of apartments are in your budget. And so what I mean by this is you could be looking for a studio, a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, but sometimes they're out of your budget. You may need a 2-bedroom and you have a roommate, but the 2 bedrooms are way out of your budget and not an option for you. And so what do you do here? You look at possibly flex bedrooms. And so if you're unsure what a flex bedroom is, it is when they put up a temporary wall in the unit in order to make let's say a 1-bedroom into a 2-bedroom. And so these are really great options for somebody who has the budget for a 1-bedroom but needs a 2-bedroom. It is a little bit pricey to put up a wall. It's about $1,000, give or take, a couple of $100s, depending on what type of wall you put up, any requirements that the building has. But this is still a cheaper option than maybe going for a 2-bedroom unit, which is way out of your price range. And so knowing what apartment style and what apartment type that you are looking for is really good to know when you're going into the tours, because it's important to ask if you're able to put up a flex wall. Maybe you're looking at a 1-bedroom, but they don't allow for a flex wall, or where you have to put the flex wall will not allow for a big enough bedroom for both roommates. So knowing this beforehand is really good. And then the last thing for this tip is to save money for your deposit. And a lot of money goes out the door in that first month when you sign the lease. There's the option for broker fees that you might have to pay if you went through a broker. You have to pay your deposit, you have to pay your first month's rent, all in one chunk of change. And so saving money for this initial step is really crucial. And so it's important to save money for your deposit because all that stuff sort of adds up when you start and sign your lease. The 5th tip I have is to know your wants versus your needs. And so I would recommend creating a list of the things that you must have in your apartment versus the things that you want to have in your apartment. And so your wants are negotiable. So for example, I put a list together of things that could potentially be in your wants or your needs category. Things like laundry, air conditioning, a dishwasher, natural lighting, you may want a gym in your building, doorman, pets allowed. And so, for example, you may need a laundry in the building, but you want a laundry in your unit. Or you may absolutely need a pets allowed policy because you're bringing your dog or your cat, and so that's something that you can't negotiate with, and you need a building or an apartment that will allow for pets. And so it's important to write down the things that you need and want and know what's negotiable for you, not negotiable when you're talking to like the landlord or the broker or the realtor or anything, negotiable for you, and things that you'd be willing to set aside if you need to and you found a great apartment that maybe doesn't have, a dishwasher or something. That's something that you don't need. And then the 6th tip I have is to have all your paperwork ready. So let's say you've found your dream apartment, you want to apply, you're ready to apply, and the only thing that's stopping you is all this paperwork that you need. They tell you, here's the application, here's everything we need, and then it takes days to come up with that stuff. And so having that stuff ready at the drop of a hat and going into the apartment, loving it, and saying, here's my application with everything you're going to need will make the process so much easier and will most likely allow you to get approved for the apartment as well as get your application in before maybe anyone else, or even you can be the first application that's in. And so I put together a list of everything that you might need to apply for an apartment. This is according to Street Easy, and just to let you know, every place is different, and so I actually applied to 2 apartments. One place required almost all of these things. The other place didn't require as many things. And so some of the things you may need are your employment verification forms, your 3 most recent pay stubs, your 3 most recent bank statements, your federal tax returns, 2 forms of photo ID, and then a application fee which cannot exceed $20. You may also, if you've lived in an apartment before or if you've rented before, you may also need a prior landlord recommendation letter. So hopefully you were good tenants. And then if you you may need a guarantor. This is depending on your own salary and your income. There are certain limits within New York City, and you have to make a minimum amount of money per the rent on the monthly of the apartment. And so I don't know the exact numbers, but sometimes you're required to make 40 times the monthly rent. And I believe if you don't make this, you can have somebody, a guarantor, sign on your lease, and this person will be responsible for paying if you do not pay your monthly rent. This person can be, or most likely is, like a parent or a guardian or a family member. And so, this person needs to make, I believe, 80 times the monthly rent in order to be able to sign on your lease. So that's also important to know, and also important to work into your budget is if you don't have a guarantor, your monthly rent needs to be a little bit lower so that you can be able to get approved for these apartments if you don't make that much in your salary or have money in the bank or whatever it may be. And then the last tip and the 7th tip I have is to read your lease thoroughly. I cannot stress that enough. Read your lease thoroughly. And so you've applied for the apartment now, you just got approved, and it's time to sign your lease. They send you a document that's 30 pages, and you're just like, okay, let me initial, let me sign, let me get this over with and get this apartment. Do not do that. I was in the same boat as you. I just wanted to sign, but I felt guilty not reading it, and so I did. And that is the reason why me and my roommate had ended up not going through with our original apartment that we were going to get. Read through the lease, found a couple of things that just didn't sit right with me, and my roommate and I decided not to go through with it. And so make sure you understand everything in the lease. There's a lot of standard language in the lease that you're going to find everywhere that you just kind of have to deal with, but there's a couple of things that they may add to the lease specific to the building that you want to know about. Things like additional fees you might have to pay, maybe any restrictions that you need to be aware of. So there's a lot of things that were in the lease that you don't always necessarily go over with the person who's showing you the apartment. They can't tell you everything that's going to come up in the lease unless you're asking all these specific questions. And so make sure that you read the list thoroughly. And now that I'm thinking of it, that's also a tip, is to come with a list of questions for each apartment that you want to know the answer to, because if you have to apply right away, you don't have time to ask all these questions. Maybe a day later, if you have to email the person, they don't get back to you. Ask them right up front exactly what you want to know, so that if you get all your application materials in for this apartment, you get approved, you can read through the lease and sign it, and there's no questions about certain things that you maybe had issues with or were unsure about. And so that, I guess, is the 8th tip I have for you guys. And that is it. I have now in total 8 tips that I just told you guys about. I definitely recommend starting your apartment search early, even if you're not looking to move in for a little while. Start on Street Easy, get a feel for the prices, get a feel for what type of units are going up in the neighborhood, and don't get discouraged if you find a apartment that you love and it goes away the next day. I promise something else will come up. When you're about 2 or 3 weeks out from your move-in date, officially go and tour apartments and put in an application on a lease. I hope that you get approved if you do, and I am so excited to be moving to New York City. And if you are watching this video because you are moving to New York City as well, I'm so excited for you. Or if you're just moving in general, if you're thinking about moving in the future, go for it, do it. It's really, really fun, exciting, and a bit stressful. And so if you made it to this part in the video, I truly appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching this video. Again, if you haven't seen my first 3 videos on my apartment hunting journey and my searches, I include the apartment tour and the price. I will link that down below. And that's all I have for you guys. And I'm gonna make a plea one more time to subscribe to my channel. I would really, really appreciate it. I post videos every Thursday. If you love New York City content, get ready because I am moving there soon and it will be coming, I promise. And that is it. So I will talk to you guys soon. Bye for now.